you need a technical project manager on a assay-based platform. So what are the absolute must requirements for traits for a technical project manager for these complex platforms? Because, you know, that is the one hire. If you're going to hire one person to run a project at a client site, whether it's a startup, whether it's a global company, you know, obviously you need to have assay scientists, but you definitely need a technical project manager. And then from there, it's kind of up to a lot of different factors, what your team internally looks like. But talk to me a little bit about the absolute must traits for a technical project manager for a complex electromechanical or IVD system.
Yeah, that's fair. I couldn't agree more. That position is so crucial. They're overseeing all of these other engineers, scientists, designers, and they need to know enough about all those different disciplines to understand how they relate together. I'd say the must have trait is they understand where these different disciplines overlap and what are the most likely pitfalls of those overlaps. Years ago, someone told me kind of, every project either succeeds or fails at those overlaps, at the interfaces, right? The interfaces of disciplines, the interfaces of subsystems. If you don't get the interfaces right between your team members and your subsystems, that's where things are going to fall because it's inherently those interfaces where you have the biggest weaknesses system, whether the system's people or so. I think coming back to your question, that technical project manager needs to know and anticipate what those interfaces are going to be, whether that's the interface between the cartridge or the instrument, or the interface between the software engineers and the electrical engineers, or the interface between the chemists and the people designing the cartridge. If they've had enough experience designing other systems where they have learned potentially the hard way, where those interfaces are likely to fail, they can head those things off. And so they can make sure they're pulling together the right people at the right time for the right meetings. Sometimes as formal as laying out maybe an interface specification where you're literally detailing bullet by bullet how this part of the system is going to mesh with that. I think that experience from previous projects, from previous companies, if you can be hiring someone who can walk in and say, you know, and you ask them, what's your experience understanding interfaces? And they have a solid answer and they know exactly where things fail like that. That kind of experience is really going to make or break a technical project manager.
Yeah, that's great, Brian. And you stole my question.
Sorry about that, Eddie.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, yeah, this is the most critical hire or team member, right, for IVD platform development. What do you want to learn in an interview to make sure you're hiring the right candidate? I know you said, how do you define interfaces? But I guess my thought was, how have you handled failures, right? Failures in prior, because clearly you're going to want to hire an experienced program manager, ideally somebody who has IVD platform experience. But let's say, a failure that comes to mind to me is like somebody has run a cartridge based program before. You fire up the system for the first time with the first prototype of the cartridge and it doesn't work. And so we want to hear how that project manager, went about kind of separating effects and understanding why that first run of that cartridge didn't work. And so hear them talk through both at the system level, the cartridge level, and to your point, Brian, at the interface. So you want
Yeah.
to hear those things, hear how it interfaces to the instrument, and just let them talk you through that because these problems will come about, for their program that they're being hired for.
Yeah. And maybe I agree with everything you said. The only word choice I would change is those aren't necessarily failures as much as more the unexpected.
Learnings, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think in any new cutting edge high tech device you're designing, there will be the unexpected. Like you said, you fire up the system, the alpha prototype the first time you fire it up, guaranteed there'll be unexpected things. Even if you've done the absolute best job, you've planned everything out, you've developed good specification, you've, done all the design reviews. If you fire it up and nothing goes wrong, you're probably not working on enough cutting edge of a device. So there's going to be unexpected and unexpected oftentimes of, you fire the system up and there's some unexpected thermal impact that affects your optical system, some weird interface, kind of a multi-physics kind of interface, right? Where you were not expecting um, that the optical system could possibly be affected by this. And so you get that unexpected and exactly to your point. Okay, how are you going to handle things there? And to your point of kind of interviewing, getting their sense of what do they do at those times? How do they push through that? How do they problem solve their way out of it? Looking for, do they isolate variables? Do they fall back on looking at what kind of testing's been done to date? What are some ways that they can set up quick little experiments, quick little design of experiments to go through and say, okay, we think it might be a thermal effect on these optics. How do we test that? Maybe it's really simple. Maybe it's turn off the heater, but maybe that's not that easy. And so, is there a way to put some interesting instrumentation in there to make measurements? You'd want to hear that they have gone through that experience, that they take it seriously, but they also aren't, they're not crippled when something like that comes up. They know how to pull the team together, get the right people in the room, come up with a quick experiment, and ideally push through it. If they've got that experience, if they've done that a lot, when they're working on that next product and the next product has a new technology on it, they're going to be cool, level-headed, and good at problem solving their way out of it.
Yep. Yeah. So you touched on something right there at the end I wanted to bring up. So I feel like you're gonna find candidates that have been down that path before and solved problems, but it's the intangibles. What intangibles are you looking for in a project manager that would give you the confidence that they're going to be able to carry the program through all these trials and tribulations? You mentioned cool-headedness. I think that's a must. But and you yourself having run programs, like what are some of the intangibles that are required for a technical project manager for IVD platforms?
I mean, great organization. There's always going to be a million details on the project, being able to be organized. Also, inherently in any big program as a project manager, you will not be able to know all of those details. So I think being able to decipher out what are the key details you need to know and what are the other details you need to leave to your team members to know. As a project manager, if you get caught up trying to keep track of every single detail, you'll be lost. And so I think those kind of intangible qualities of being able to parse information, catch on what are the key things that you should be aware of. If one of your team members comes to you and says the mounting of this cartridge in the instrument, it seems like the fixturing of it is stressing the cartridge, and we are getting evidence of stress, mechanical stress in the cartridge. You may not need to go into all of the small details of exactly how that stress is being imparted in the cartridge, but you should be able to pretty quickly ask the questions, okay, what are the basic loads on the cartridge? Did we expect those there? And pretty quickly be able to hit on, what are the key things here that might be driving the stress effects. So I think, and then coming back to your intangible thing, I think we mentioned level-headed. Maybe one other intangible is being able to draw on the strengths of your team members, right? Understanding where your team members excel the most and put them in the position to do that. So if you have a team member that's phenomenal at testing, knowing when the right time to draw in expertise is, or another team member that's phenomenal at designing, those people dynamics, understanding your team members, that's another big intangible thing.